Welcome to Tots and Teens in Focus. I'm your host, Patricia Trim. Today I have a very special guest, and this is something that the community need to hear and need to know how they can help their family who has mental ill problem. She is no other than Sonya Davie. Sonya Davie is a life coach of mental health, and she will give us more about her career and where she came from and how she get involved in helping people in mental health. This is a family dynamics that need to be looked into a lot because it doesn't start now. It starts years before, or it start on drugs or whatever the situation may be. Miss Simone Davie, welcome to Tots and Teens. I know you're not a tot or a teen, but you just right for the occasion. Welcome once again.
Thank you. Thank you. No, I'm not a teen, but I have a very youthful energy. So this is fine for me. So again, my name is Sonya Davie, and I am from Brooklyn, New York. I am a New York State licensed mental health counselor. I'm also a certified life coach, and I'm also a health coach. I'm also I'm certified in what's called certified mental health integrative medicine provider. And so what that means is I look at the total body and I help clients to look at their mental health and from a holistic standpoint with holistic practices, as well as integrating mental health nutrition. So I look at the whole body of an individual when it comes to their mental health, and I promote what's called mental wellness, because that is very important. That is looking at their emotional state as well as their physical state, because the two go hand in hand. And I'll talk a little bit more about that. I'm also a clinician with PAPA, NYPD PAPA, and that stands for Police Officers Providing Peer Assistance. And that's when the NYPD has an organization outside of them that provides mental health counseling exclusively to NYPD. So I am also one of their clinicians.
Okay, I was wondering what the pop-up was for, but you give us this enough what the pop-up is for.
So those are the peer officers work with mental health professionals to provide emotional support to all police officers and their families.
Okay. My question to you today is, there's a lot of mental health on the streets, a lot. I want to know, we don't have enough care provider to take into consideration how they're doing and their well-being. Some don't want to stay in institutions. Some just want to be on the streets. Can you tell me the difference between that not taking the medication and not having, being forced to take the medication? Is it the wellness or the body or the meals that they don't have, the healthy lifestyle that they're supposed to have?
That's a good question. That's actually a question that we could talk about in a segment all by itself. But I'll give you a brief answer to that, because I also have years of working with the homeless population. So I worked part-time. I used to work part-time in a mental health shelter, and then I also had created my own life coaching program that I used to bring into men and women shelters. And so when you're dealing with mental health people, let's just say those that are on the street. So they may not always be homeless, but you do have some people that have extreme mental illness where they are living on the streets and they are in such an extreme state where they do not want to be indoors, whether it's in their own family homes or in a shelter or any type of residency. And that is an extreme case of mental illness. Sometimes they can benefit from medication, and sometimes, believe it or not, and this is hard for some people to believe, they may be in that state from too much medication. Sometimes people are medicated very poorly. Medication is not mental health. Let me be real clear. Mental health medication is not for everyone. It is not. It is for some. Some people have extreme cases and they will need it for regulation. But sometimes there are people that are over medicated, and when between all of those different types of medications in their systems, it can also contribute to psychosis. And so, because like I said, I am a therapist as well as a health coach, and I do extensive training in this, I want people to understand, yes, for some people, mental health medication can be a bridge and it should be for some a short bridge, because a lot of those medications, as effective as some of them are, some of them taken too long are extremely problematic and can contribute to exacerbating mental illness or even psychosis. And I know a lot of people are, because they look sometimes so wholeheartedly for the medication to be the answer for their family member getting better, and it can be twofold. It really can be. So I think one of the things you said earlier, people who have mental health issues of any type, but particularly with the extreme cases, they need a much broader treatment. I mean, evaluation. They need to have physical things taken into consideration, as well as they don't just need talk therapy. They need to really have their entire body looked at for other illnesses or different things that can contribute to their mental health. I know it's a long answer, but yeah.
Yes, it's a long answer. Another question I would like to ask you too, because I was trained as a drug counselor, and I know that I got into fights with people because I never know what is drugs. I don't even know what the drug, I don't even know what it looked like. But I was sent on this course because I was dealing with children. So I was dealing with the preventative measure. And, I never knew that the people that were on the course was recovered addicts. So the system took recovered addicts to help those who are sick on their drugs. But I find that having a person who is a recovered addict to deal with people who are addicts, I don't find it's right, because they feel to themselves that they have to get this substance abuse to feel better. How do you think about that?
Now, I'm going to make sure I understand the question. The question is, should people that are recovering addicts and others
help those who are addicts in addiction?
For a long time, that was how they used to think, that only a person that went through it could help someone that's going through it. And I did work in a drug program, drug program at one point, and I believe both people are involved. And I used to tell everyone this all the time. I said, if you have someone who's formerly, who's a former substance user, and they are highly educated, and they're highly educated in drug counseling. They got the tools. They even have and also making sure they have a handle on their own substance use, because there are times when I've worked with people that relapse, but they can be extremely effective counselors when they are highly educated with the tools of being a drug counselor. But I think you need both people that work. You need people that have maybe had a history, but you also need a lot of people who've never had a history of drug use, because sometimes you can have people that come in with life issues and traumas, and if they had someone who's maybe even had the same experiences and never used drugs, that can also be helpful as well. So I think both sets of people can work with the population, but the main key is that they have to be highly educated, and they have to be open to continuing education to hone their skills and what they do.
Because I feel to myself, once you were on that, how could you help this one that needs help?
Because you can get to the other side of it. There are people that have gotten to the other side of their own substance use, gone back to school. And like I said, they've had a track record of where they've been clean for a while. They've been clean for a long time. They understand what led to their substance use, because there's a lot, and let's be honest, a lot of people that are dealing with substance use have a history of trauma. A lot of people. And and that doesn't always it's getting addressed more now, but there are a lot of people that have had things happen to them, and they're not on drugs just because they want to just be, out here doing it. They are numbing a lot of pain and things that have happened to them, whether it's at home, school, whatever. They just had a history of trauma. Our community has a lot of trauma, and I worked in Brooklyn. So in a nonprofit organization. So I saw a lot of that. So that fueled a lot. But then you had some people who have healed from their trauma through their own therapy. They have been clean for a long time. They've gone back to school and gotten the necessary education. And they again they can be amazing counselors, but they have to make sure, like I said, I keep pushing the education piece, because sometimes a person may think, well, I'm clean, I could just talk to people. No, 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 no. You need to know how to therapeutically speak to people and take them through certain processes of healing. That you just can't wing it just because now you've been clean for 2 weeks. You have to commit to an educational process and get what the necessary credentials, and then have, again, a track record of you being clean. And yes, then you can be effective. But we have to be careful how we look at people that have been using drugs, because if they've had things happen to them in their life and they were using drugs to numb that, that's really unfair for us to judge them.
Okay, I do believe that. But my thought process is that sometimes people get a relapse. They're willing to go ahead, but they get a relapse. They fall back easily. They get, like I say, you get like a shock, something shock you, and you go right back into that thing. That is probably because of the brains that is being damaged, or the brains not functioning the way it ought to be functioning.
Well, again, it all depends, because if that person they have to be committed to their own, they have to have a level of commitment to their own healing, whatever their sobriety. They have to be committed to it. Like, I worked with someone who was, I think when I met them, they probably had been clean maybe 20 years. And one of the things that they were very diligent about, and he was an amazing counselor, he was really good. He was very diligent in going to his weekly meetings. Like, he did not play with his sobriety, and he had been clean for over 20 years, but he also knew himself well enough to know what he needed to do to maintain that. So sometimes a person who's now on the other side, they're drug free, they're alcohol free, if they haven't made the commitment to themselves to maintain that, then that will be a problem. That will be a problem. But it doesn't mean that, again, that life will happen to them and they're going to always relapse. Some people do, but again, like I said, they have to be committed to that. And if they have to be in any type of support group ongoing, then that's what they have to do.
Then
Go ahead. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Then the other thing is that family dynamics of having mental health. How would you able to cope with that? Because somebody along the line was a mental health person, then the children come and they have it.
Well, we have to look at, like I said, there's a lot of things we have to look at. And this is why I want to educate, particularly our community, at this. Now, can there be maybe some things biologically that makes a person more sensitive or more vulnerable to a yes, I'm not going to say that, but I don't want us to take it and run with it like, oh, well, because your grandmother was, I'm going to be, or no, because there's also so many layers that contribute to mental health. There are even health issues. We can have chronic health issues that can contribute to mental health. And people, we don't always look at it that way. You can have a family history of chronic illnesses. And again, if they're not properly managed, and we can use diabetes, for example. So where a person we have family histories of diabetes because of lifestyle choices. And then now all of a sudden we have people that are depressed with diabetes, because I won't go into the whole science behind it, but there are times when medications that they have to take for their diabetes can contribute to things that can potentially contribute to depression. But if you don't know that, then you're just going to think, oh, well, because my grandmother's diabetic and now she's depressed, then I'm going to be. So like I said, mental health and family dynamics have to be looked at much broader. Yes, we have to look at histories of trauma, but we also have to look at, we need to incorporate genetic testing, the field does, so we can look at and give people a much more understanding as to why there's mental health. We just look at it as a mystery. Oh yeah, well, they're mentally ill, so that means you're going to be. We need to look at why. And that's kind of the approach that I take when a person has different health issues, or because my evaluations and questions are very extensive. I want to get more of a why it is, so we don't have to have this mystery of thinking that we're going to always be subjected to something that our family members suffer from.
Checks and balance. So much that we talk for the the diagnosis and what happened. what is the healing process? How can the family dynamics be in the healing process, or the community be a part of the healing process?
Well, that's a great question. The first thing with the healing process we have to do is recognize there's a problem. Okay. We have to be honest when there are issues that are going on, whether it's with us individually or in our families. When I said I worked for an agency, I worked in mandated anger management and parenting programs. So people were mandated to come to see me in our program. And one of the things that they were forced to do was to realize the things in our either family dynamics or our cultures or whatever that are not healthy. So we have to be honest about things and not let pride get in the way of seeking help. Second, we have to commit to the process. Whatever the process of healing is, if that means including a therapist, which it should, then commit to that process. If it's a process of individual therapy and then family therapy, then we have to commit to that. And that's where usually the biggest challenge is, because we either feel like we don't need it, or, and if the whole family's not on board, that's fine. Then whoever is on board to get their individual healing, get it. But we do have to recognize that there's some dynamics in us, and it doesn't mean because we're bad people. It means that we've had a lot of things happen to us, whether it's dealing with on a larger scale from a racial standpoint, things we're dealing with, or culturally we've had things to deal with. I work with a lot of people from the Caribbean who I love, and so sometimes coming to this country, and there's a lot of dynamics and things that happen for them. Even people that were just born here, there's so many things that have been traumatic, and we really have to understand what trauma is, what it looks like, and how it affects us, not only individually, but how trauma affects our children. Because a lot of times I've seen parents my kid needs this, they need to go to therapy. And after a conversation with the parent, I'm like, you need to go, and she needs to go. Because if she goes, or your son goes, if they go and you don't get help, we're sending them back into an environment with more trauma, because you're toxic. And with me working with a lot of ACS cases, I've had to tell parents, this is not just your kids, or your kids are acting this way as a result of you. And you're acting this way because you have a history of trauma. Doesn't mean you're a bad parent intentionally, but you've had some trauma. So we have to be very honest. Like I said, just again, where the help is committing, being honest about the problems that are in our family, committing to the process of healing, sticking with it and not judge ourselves.
A lot of family reject. I feel that rejection, not having, oh, he's crazy, he's not coming in here. Oh, she's crazy, she's not coming in. They're not trying to help. Emotionally, it affects them because they are turning for help and you are turning them down. How would you deal with talking to parents and, demanding that they give some kind of attention to these, their children, their family, or whosoever? They are human. They are feeling pain.
Right.
And sometimes we feel that they're not feeling pain. We leave them to walk the streets or whatever when we could help. How would the system, I know they can't impose on them, but they can help to get them back to themselves, either helping them to get into a apartment of their own so they can recover, and then getting them into the apartment, they might, if they're on drugs, they go back on drugs. So
well, that part is
what can the system do?
Look, well, let me just say, Trip, that's a big question, because the system is very overwhelmed right now. So getting people into, and like I said, I worked for years with the homeless population. So just getting people apartments is not that easy. There's not enough supportive housing for the need. It really isn't. And I think it all depends if the person, and this is where the problem, and I can understand, empathize with some families, because if the person has become dangerous, then we have another problem. Then that's when, unfortunately, police have to be involved, and it gets very convoluted at that point, because, like I said, the spaces for people are limited, and the system is still overhauling to try to accommodate those situations. But for those who have family members that are not to that extreme, then they do need to understand and admit to themselves, you know what, this is a problem. This is not indicative of our family, but this is a person that needs help. And we need to, again, commit to providing, getting them the services that they need. And then, like I said, as parents, family members, we got to be willing to, if you go into therapy, maybe with them at some point, because they may have some issues that have come up from their past where the parents might be a part of the problem. We got to be honest about that. And so many parents reject that. There's so many that don't, because they get very offended. I'm just gonna say, in our community, parents get real offended, because I've had clients who've asked could their parents come to sessions, and they'll get real offended because well, I did the best I could. I'm not saying that you're a bad parent, but again, there's some things that may have happened that you need to be aware of that can contribute to this adult child or young teen being the way that they are.
I'm glad that I'm having this talk with you, because, there's a child. She had wanted to live with her father since she was young, but she was emotionally abused, physically abused, and by the stepmother and the father. If she do something wrong, the stepmother is going to call the father wherever he is. He come in with a belt and tell her to lie down and to be beaten.
That's abuse.
Right. So she never, they threaten her. You talk, or you tell your grandmother, you tell anybody, we're going to beat you again. The child was wanted to be with her father. However, the grandmother told me, I said, look, give me his number, because I'm going to call the ACS on him. Mother already, she didn't give it to me. However, the child was going through so much that eventually she called her mother and tell her mother to get your child, because, the abuse is too much. I feel to myself, since the first thing happened, it should have been nip in the brow, nip in the bottom, not wait to this stage. Now she's 16. The grandmother feel that she can give her things to quiet the emotion. And I said, no, she needs to go to therapy. What are you doing? This child needs to go to therapy. The mother needs to take her to therapy, because it's just that she be calling you all the time, and you on the phone, and you send money for her. I said, she is searching not for finances, not for money. She's trying to be healed. And I don't want to put them in any trouble, but for me, dealing with children, that's a no-no. That's a no-no, so that child, when probably later on, she just get parents, doing things that she don't want to do, and feel that every time that she call a beck and a call, they have to give her something, and that is ruining that child's life.
Well, you're absolutely correct.
What do you think about that?
Well, you're absolutely correct. First of all, there needs to be, and again, I've worked with ACS for a long time, and I know we have a love-hate relationship with ACS, but there are dynamics of our parenting, that need to be looked at. And and that beating is abuse. And there are going to be some people that'll disagree with that, because they'll say, well, I was beat, and, and I'm going to discipline is one thing. Abuse is another. And we have to be real clear, understand the distinction between the two. And that beating with the belt, and the only response to anything is a beating, that's abuse. Okay. So that's first and foremost. For a child that's trauma, that can be very traumatic. And again, there are a lot of parents that may not want to believe that, but it can. And so trauma has a way of staying with a person for years if it's not dealt with. So you can have an adult that responds a certain way, and it's a trauma response. They can respond in anger. I taught anger management for almost 10 years. So a lot of times when people are lashing out, not all, because I don't want to make, for everybody, but there are a lot of times when there's trauma attached to it. And so when we look at our kids later on, and we're wondering why they're acting a certain way, or why they may be using drugs.
She was going through this since she was 4 years old, living with the father. And the stepmother and the stepmother children, and the father said, I think the mother said, the father said, she don't want to listen. listen, that you got to be beating her every time that the stepmother complains to you. Look, I need these people to get done. I don't want to be wicked, but I just feel for that child, because there is where you have another mental case that is coming up, because eventually she just can't take it no more, and she don't need the things them anymore, and she just get, you know, as we say back home, flighty.
Right, exactly. And that's the reason why, again, when I say a lot of our discipline practices, we have to look at. We have to look at a lot of what we think is appropriate discipline, when it is not. It is abuse. And again, a lot of parents will say, well, that's what happened to me. It does not mean that needs to carry over into
No,
the next
I was
generation.
abused by my mother. That was abuse. You know, because we said that if it is happening today, they would have gone to jail, because it was abuse. You know, you abuse your children too, you know, because you take it from your parents and you go doing the same thing. But I still tell my children, I love them. I love them. I call them every day and talk to them, because I know that I was beating the little behind when they do anything wrong. But at the same time, you know, we didn't know better. But now that you know better,
you know better, we have to do better.
Right.
We're required to do better.
And
listen, there are what we call ACS appropriate spankings with the hand on the buttocks when they're young. Those are appropriate. Those are not, but it is the other stuff that we
used to be them bad, because we used to get bad licks too, and we feel it was okay.
Yeah. So, but like I said, the trauma is and the behaviors for kids are carrying on for so long. And then, like I said, because a lot of times when I see some of the behavior in kids, I'm not giving it an excuse, but I can say that's a trauma response. It's a trauma response. And this is why what I said to you earlier, when I would have parents that were mandated to our program, 99% of the time, I always had to address the parent because they would come in complaining about they're there because of their kids. The first session, they would always complain about their kids. Always complain about what the kids did, and then I would let them talk, because by the next few sessions, I would have to say, no. Your kid's behavior is a response of this. It's a response of that. It's a response of the home environment. It's a response of someone touched them and you were not aware of it. It's a response of they told you that they, it's a lot of things that you are not. It's a response of divorce. I had a young guy once who was in our anger management program, and his parents had gotten a divorce when he was 9 years old. And he was very close to his father and couldn't really see his father that much after the divorce. And I asked him, I said, when you were younger in school, did you tear up classrooms? And he looked at me and nodded his head, yes. Because he was a little kid, didn't know how to deal with his emotions, would destroy classrooms. When we hear about this in schools, when the kids have to leave because one kid, because his parents are going through a divorce. There's a lot of times we don't, when parents are in survival mode, trying to hold things together, but they don't realize the emotional impact that it has on their children. And that's where, again, for us, we get real defensive. Well, I'm doing the best I can. I'm not saying that you're not, but you also need to see if there's any emotional collateral damage that has happened to your children that needs to be addressed, as well as your own stuff,
Yeah. Oh boy, there is so much things that need to be known, but is not known. Need to be looked at, but is not looked at. And sometimes we blame the system. Sometimes I blame social workers. I say, there was one child in my program, and they took her away because the mother got this child for this gentleman, but she gave the other gentleman the child, and he get to find out, and they had. And this child was just like 7, 8, 9 going in. So she had to deal with all this trauma back and forth, the father, which she didn't like the father at all. And she didn't want to be there, but she was forced by the ACS to be there. And I felt that they shouldn't force her because she don't know him, she know her mother, right? And that child come out very, very bad and rejective. Because you feel that the state did her wrong, by leaving her there. It's not something that she liked,
Right.
And she had to go through this since she's small. And some elderly folks don't know what they're doing to their children, or they're destroying them. And sometimes I feel that this type of thing, both of them should face the law and thing, because if he insists on keeping this child and destroy her, he should pay the penalty for it, because it's not a case that she had wanted to go. She didn't know him. He just come out to do and say, I'm your father. You know, and I think he was just willfully doing it, but they don't know how they are killing their children and taking their children. However, your last thought before we go, because my time is almost up.
No problem. Oh, my last thoughts. Well,
Yeah.
I think I want to commend you. I'm glad you gave me. I want to commend you, because having these types of conversations are extremely important for our community. I have this, I make a joke and say our community just started going to therapy on Tuesday, meaning we are just finally starting to embrace the benefits of it. And I'm very happy. I'm glad that we're doing it. I'm glad, because there's a lot of, like I said, things in our history, in our past that need attention. And when people get that attention and get a better understanding of what emotional health needs to look like, they're a lot more open to it, because, working with people that were mandated to come to our programs, they actually, in the end, were always pleasantly surprised at the outcome and the information that they gained and how helpful it was. So I think what you're doing is great. Continuing to do this, continue to bring these conversations to the masses. And, hopefully more and more people will understand that therapy is not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you're crazy. It's just you're on an emotional journey of healing. Yeah. That's it.
But I do hope that I could get you back to let us continue this conversation, because this conversation is not a little long or a peg in there. It's a long story, and it needs to be known, because this is how young boys and young girls go off taking drugs, because they are emotionally affected, but they're just looking for something to happiness. Miss Davie, Simone, Davie, thank you very much for being on. It was a pleasure having you on. And I know our viewers out there will be love to know more about this, talking about the real talk of mental illness.
Well, they can go to my website at sonyadavie.com, or they can follow me on Instagram at Sonya Davie, and we can continue those conversations.
But I would like to have